Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Development Standards. Do we have any apologies?
Yes, Convener, apologies from Councillors Durno and Sturrock.
Thank you. And agenda item 2, declaration of interest. Anybody have declaration of interest? No declarations of interest? Okay, we'll carry on to agenda item number 3. Building warrants. The committee is asked to note that during the period 29th of January to the 25th of February 2022, a total of 55 building warrants, 10 amendment to warrants have been approved with a cost of £7,622,391. Is that noted?
Noted.
Agenda item 4, delegated decisions. During the period, the committee is asked to note that during the period the 29th of January to the 25th of February 2022, a total of 37 planning applications have been approved with 2 refused under the scheme of delegation. Is that noted?
Noted.
Agenda item 5, minutes of the previous meeting, is those noted or approved?
Yep.
Okay, we'll move on to agenda item 6, land at Shanklin. This is planning application for a change on three conditions regarding the planning application, which was approved on 2019, was passed in 2019. So there's a change in conditions of 3 of the conditions. Okay, Mr. Hunter, can you give us slides, please?
I can indeed, Convener. Thank you and good morning, members. As you've indicated, Convener, this is an application for approval of matters specified in conditions attached to a planning permission in principle. The site is a land at Shanklin Wellbank, and it relates to the formation of the golf course, the hotel, the golf resort development that was approved subject to planning permission in principle in May 2019. Now, members will be aware this is dealing with the detail of the proposal. It's matters specified in condition. This is not an opportunity to revisit the principle of the development. The principle of the development has been established. We're looking very specifically at the matters specified in conditions, particularly those specified in relation to the overall development. So that's the master plan for the site, the leisure development zone, which comprises the golf course and the golf driving range and associated facilities, and the hotel and spa zone of the development. Again, members will recall there is red proposal, and whilst the generality of those are covered in the master plan as part of the overall development, those aspects are not specifically addressed by this application. They will require a further application for approval at a later date. Moving on, we see the applications area around about 127 hectares in total area. You see the boundaries identified in red, Wellbank lying to the southwest, Quarry to the east, to the right-hand side of the screen. We have the public road, the B9 to the west, and we have Drumsturdy Road lying to the south of the site. Existing Forbes of Kingenny Resort just round about the centre of the screen before you. In red, we have a number of properties identified. Those lie within the overall context of the application site, but they're not in the control or ownership of the applicant, and but they are properties that are directly affected by the proposals before us. As we've said, planning permissions been granted for this site previously. Original permission granted in 2010. That's all. And you can see the master plan that was provided at that point. Just to run through that, we have the access from Drumsturdy Road. We have a number of fairway plots located at the southern extent of the site in the vicinity of an existing property called Blaweary. We have the golf course element of the development within the central area of the site. Again, a limited number of fairway plots located just at the western side of the golf course. We have the hotel located within the central area, a number again of fairway plots located to the north of the site, a property known as 3 to 4 Shankafamaki cottages located to the northwest of the indicative hotel position, a main access running to the north of a property known as Riggside, again the Golf Academy driving range located at the western extent of the site. We have North Cottage located in the proximity of the driving range, North Kingenny located just to the south of that, and indicatively 75 mainstream housing plots located just to the north of the village of Kingenny. So an aerial photograph, just to give it a little more context. Wellbank, the properties that I've referenced, 3 and 4, Shankafamaki, Riggside, North Cottage, North Kingenny. I think this is 20 Mattocks Road, just at the southern extent of this part of the site, and Blaweary located in the area here, Cunmont Quarry, and the existing forbs of the fishing ponds located in the central area of the screen. Again, in relation to history, this is a master plan drawing which was approved in 2014. So you can see, very similar to the master plan planning application, an access from Drumsturdy Road, a number of residential plots in the proximity of Blaweary, golf central area, fairway plots located to the west of that, mainstream housing located in Kingenny Village, golf course located, golf hotel located within the central northern part of the site in the proximity of 3 and 4 Shankafamaki, the golf driving range between North Kingenny and North Cottage, this time the access located to the south of Riggside, so located to the public road that forms the western boundary of the site, achieve the required visibility sight lines at this location. The relationship between the existing properties and the proposed development, and this is the master plan that was approved by committee in 2014. This is the master plan drawing submitted with the current, follows a very similar format with the access taken from Drumsturdy, limited number of residential plots at the southern extent of the site, golf course spine of the development, limited number of fairway plots to the west of that, mainstream housing located to the north of Kingenny with scope for potential expansion of the primary school as may be required, provision for open space within that area, a main area of open space serving the wider development, 85 fairway plots in total, but including the plots around about the northern part of the site. Again, access retained, property known as Riggside. The big change in relation to this proposal relates to the configuration around the zone. And this just gives a little more information in relation to that. So the top image here is the detail that was approved in 2014 and the bottom revised proposal. So immediately you'll notice the very distinct difference between the design, the layout, the footprint of the hotel building. In 2014, we had a three-pronged approach, 3 spines providing the accommodation. The revised proposal shows a single bigger structure located on a slightly different axis, taking advantage of the views towards the southeast across the Tay estuary. And again, you can see the car parking configuration changed in this area. We have lodge buildings, 10 lodges associated with the hotel, similar to the configuration proposed with the 2014 permission, and the clubhouse located to the east of the hotel building itself. This time, a little more landscaping between the hotel and the clubhouse building. Approved by committee in 2014, very contemporary in terms of its design. As I've said, the three wings with the ground floor area providing the connection, the public areas linking the three spines of the development itself, but very contemporary in terms of its appearance. The revised proposal, we have the north elevation. This would provide the main entrance to the facility. More traditional in terms of the north elevation, more traditional, the turret features, stone detailing, the slate roofs. The south elevation maybe comprising a blend of traditional and contemporary features, but a different design approach. Previous building, the original approved building, around about 24 metres in height to the ridge. The highest part of this would be 28 metres, so 28 metres to the apex of the central ridge. The wings that we see in this area around about 22 metres in height. So comparable in height to the, but a different design approach, but in our view, equally as appropriate for the site. Just an impression of the north elevation. This would be the main entrance from the car park. So quite an imposing structure when viewed from the car park. It would befit the anticipated 5-star aspirations for the resort and for the hotel building. Lodges. So again, lodges located to the north, and they follow a similar design theme. Semi-detached properties, 10 in total, with accommodation associated with the hotel structure itself. This is an image again from the 2014 application, just shows the proposed building sitting within the landscape framework. Now this shows it sitting within the agricultural context that exists at the present time. Clearly that changes. We would have fairway plots located in the foreground that we see here, golf course located to the right hand side of the screen, and the fairway plots located around the northern extent of the skyline that we see here, all augmented with structural landscape planting that would be provided as part of the development. But you can see 22 metres to height for the building approved in 2014. Current proposal would be slightly higher than that in terms of its apex, slightly lower on the wings, but similar in terms of its overall scale. It will be a prominent building within its local landscape setting. The south elevation of the building, the mix of contemporary detail and the more traditional approach for the central wing of the development, and the public areas that you can see addressing the golf course and the landscaped areas associated with the building. In addition to the golf hotel, other buildings associated with the development, we have a gatehouse, the golf academy building, the clubhouse and cart store, and a maintenance building. And very quickly, I'll run through the elevations for those. This is the gatehouse feature that would be located next to the public road to the west. You can see the gates indicated in this area, and that's been an issue that's raised as a concern in relation to the proposal. But to be clear, the proposal is that the main road into the development would be an adopted road. The gates could only be closed through discussion, consultation and agreement with the Roads Authority. You cannot obstruct a public road without the approval of the Roads Authority, and that would only be done in very limited circumstances where it was directly associated with the operation of an event at the resort, where appropriate traffic management arrangements would be in place. This is the Golf Academy golf driving range building, again following a similar design ethos to the main hotel building. The clubhouse elevations, again following that slightly more traditional design approach, an attractive building that would provide the function of facilities for the golf course itself. The cart store, which would be located to the east of the clubhouse, and again the golf maintenance building, which would occupy a reasonably remote location within the golf course setting itself. Moving on, we have the public road. We have the main access located round about south of the property at Rigside. Rigside provided with landscaping separation to the indicative house plots that are located to its east and south. Here, and you can perhaps make out the detail of gate entrance set back from the roadway. Firstly, by located within the confines of the road, and a public footpath located down the eastern side of the road to provide a direct link from the access down to Wellbank Village. Golf driving range sitting between North Kingenny, and landscaping provided in association with those properties, and golf safety fencing, safety net fencing provided in the vicinity of these properties. Again, just a road main entrance located round about the corner at this point, and that ensures that the visibility splays are achieved at this junction. Footpath down the east side of the road, and you can see the property at Rigside located on an elevated position just to the north. So main access, taking vehicles in to the right hand side of the screen that we see in this area in an easterly direction. This is the North Cottage property. You can see enjoys some screening at the present time, but that's augmented through planting that would be provided in association with the development. Indicatively, house plots located to the north of that, and the Golf Academy golf driving range located within the area to the south. So the area foreground that we see here becomes the Golf Academy and driving range. The property at North Kingenny, so to the north of that, again, planting provided in the vicinity of the property to provide screening from the development that takes place in its immediate environs. And indicatively, we have the mainstream housing located to the south of the property. Moving around, we have the property known as 3 to 4 Shankvamachi. That's the property just identified at the left-hand side of the screen. Current access to that property also serves Shankvamachi Farm, and you can see agricultural ground located property at the present time with some landscaping. So properties, there are many changes. They go from properties that are located within a very rural environment to properties that are located within the overall golf resort development. So again, just on this image, we have the development as approved in 2014. So you can see the existing property located here, just identified with the cursor. You can see its relationship to indicative house plots, car parking located to its north, but landscaping provided around the property to mitigate impact from the development. And you can get an impression of its relationship to the hotel development that was approved at that time. The bottom image shows the property in relation to the current proposal. Again, similar relationship to the indicative house plots. Again, car parking located to the northern extent of the property. But again, landscaping proposed in order to provide some mitigation for the occupants of that property. At this stage, just mention conditions attached to the proposal. I think it's condition 2A in the papers. That deals with lighting. The condition, as it appears in the papers, refers to a control on lighting within the leisure zone. I would advise that officers are suggesting that condition is amended to make it clear that the lighting control would also apply to the hotel and spa zone. So that's an amendment to the wording in the first sentence of condition 2A, just to make it clear that the lighting controls that are referenced therein would also apply to the hotel and its associated car parking. Again, principal outlook from this property is to the south, and you can see that's largely maintained. The outlook towards the open space area located to the southwest, additional car parking in comparison to the 2014 permission located to the south and to the southeast of the building, but the separation distance between the house itself and the hotel would increase by round about 20 metres. So slightly greater distance proposed now between this house and the hotel building itself. And again, just a photograph that shows the property within its existing context. This is the property main outlook, and the open space area that we're talking about would be located to the southwest. Hotel building located to the east, southeast roughly of the building that we see here at slightly greater distance than previously approved. Around the site, there's some reference to the existing Shank of Mackey Road, that's to Mattix Road. We have the property at 20 Mattix Road located just in the corner of the site. This is the area where the mainstream, 75 mainstream housing plots would be located, in addition to potential further open space and potential areas for expansion of Mattix Primary School. Again, these are requirements identified in the planning permission and requirements of updated with the proposal. So requirement for the Shank of Mackey Road to be upgraded to serve the service area for the hotel and the staff car parking area located in this vicinity. So requirement for this road to be upgraded, and you can see the junction and the road itself, the property at 20 Mattix Road, some existing landscaping that provides screening for the occupants of that property. But fairway plots located in this area, individual accesses out onto the upgraded Shank of Mackey Road. Again, moving around the site, this is to the property known as Blaweary, so this is to the east of the site. You can see existing golf course holes associated with the existing Forbes of Kingenny Resort, located to the north of this property. And the configuration in this area, the configuration of the golf course, largely unchanged. And again, you can see the property benefits from established landscaping, both to its south and to its east. The landscaping to the east of the property retained, the golf course holes largely on the same configuration as existing, and we have a number of fairway plots located in the proximity of the building. But again, similar to the master plan layout submitted with the original planning permission in principle, similar relationship to the planning to the detailed matters approved in 2014. So essentially the same or very similar impacts to those previously found acceptable by committee. And we have two additional holes located just to the south of these properties, which would augment the the offer associated with the existing Forbes of Kingenny Resort. So the two existing holes here are associated with the new 18-hole golf course. The existing 9-hole golf course at Forbes of Kingenny receives the two additional holes to compensate for the loss of the 2 holes that we see in this location. Again, moving around to the south of the site, the existing planning permission, all of the proposals that have been approved for the site allow for the formation of an access from Drumsturdy Road on the configuration that we see in this plan. Original proposal as submitted this time included provision for a turning circle and facilities for storage of domestic recycling for the properties located to the north. Because of the council's approach towards recycling the individual bins, the localised storage facility is and that's been deleted. So that would be replaced with planting within this area. So all we're looking at is the formation of the access to serve the limited number of plots and the golf maintenance building and the property at Blaweary itself. Some concern raised by residents on Drumsturdy Road regarding the sightlines. Just to confirm, the planning permission in principle specifies the sightline requirements associated with this junction. The principle of this junction is established by the existing permission, and the information submitted by the applicant demonstrates that the required sightlines can be provided, and our roads colleagues are satisfied that the sightline requirements identified by committee required by the existing planning permission in principle can be achieved at this location. An aerial image, the new access formed roughly in the position that we see here, and the sightline requirements achieved on Drumsturdy Road itself. Just to conclude, this site, it has planning permission in principle. The principle is established. It's a development that offers potential for significant benefits to the Angus. For the reasons the development has been approved. Originally, it represented a significant of the council's policies, but it's been approved now for a period in the region of 10 years. The applicant, I understand, has worked hard to try and deliver this proposal, and this is a next step, an important step in delivering the proposal and achieving the benefits that it can deliver for Angus. The layout, the general approach is fairly consistent with that originally indicated with the principle. It's fairly similar to what committee has previously. The general master plan is considered acceptable in the context of the layout. The addition to the golf course, the hotel zone, the golf academy elements, all of these elements have been subject of consultation with relevant consultation bodies, and we have no consultation bodies. Legitimate concern from those that live closest to it, but those concerns are addressed by conditions that are attached to the existing planning permission in principle. The conditions attached to that still, and we have further conditions that seek to regulate the development, seek to control how it's operated, attached to the papers before you today. But what we do have is the 5-star hotel for the 5-star resort that will deliver significant benefits to Angus, and the application is recommended for approval. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you. Any questions? Are you hearing me all right, Alan?
I'm
just in the papers, the date of the meeting on the 9th of May 2019, we gave planning consent on that date. Now, you're referring to 2010 and 2014 in your report. Where does the 9th of May 2019 report come in?
So 2019 is the most recent planning permission in principle. So that's we've granted planning permission in principle originally in well, the meeting was in 2010. The permission wasn't granted until sometime after that, whilst the section 75, the planning obligation at that time, was concluded. But as indicated in the report, there have been several planning applications over the intervening period just to amend conditions, to provide a degree of greater flexibility to assist in development or delivery of the development. But the 2019 permission is the planning permission in principle. That's the extant planning permission in principle, and it's that planning permission which this application relates to. This is seeking to provide the detail that's required by that planning permission in principle, convener. Hopefully that clarifies matters.
Yes, and another question, just for clarity, you've gone through the whole application. I would just like you to make it clear for the members, the three conditions that we are dealing with today, to make it clearer before we start asking questions.
Absolutely, convener. So I think Appendix 2, I think, of the papers before you, that's pages 26 to 28. They provide the original, or the 2019 planning permission in principle, and it's those matters that comprise the overall development. So essentially the master plan, how the constituent bits join together. So it's the matters identified as A, which is the overall development, the matters identified as B, which is the leisure development zone, and the matters identified as C, which is the hotel and spa zone. So the construction of the condition includes matters at D. D is the residential development zone. All we're talking about in relation to that is how that fits into the overall master plan, the generality of that in terms of the distribution of those houses. So the generality, we have 85 fairway plots and we have 75 mainstream plots, but we are not looking at the detail of the residential part at this stage. That will require a further application for approval. We're looking at the leisure development zone, the hotel details, and the overall master plan at this stage.
All right, thank you. This stage now, any questions to our officer?
Yep.
Hands up.
Sorry, could I interrupt Councillor Lumgeard, just to let you know that your clerk, Sarah Forsyth, has had to leave the meeting. So I'll assist you this morning with the meeting. Councillor Moore's got his hand up, convener.
Councillor Moore.
Thank you, convener. Yes, Mr. Hunter, thank you very much. And I'm sure you want a long drink after all that.
Stiff drink anyway, Councillor Moore.
Oh, well, whatever you can get. It refers at the start to the affordable housing. Now, I know we're not dealing with that specifically, but it states that up to 10 houses could be by developer contribution. Is there any way that we can require all 30 to be provided as affordable? I mean, this is in the countryside. We're losing people from the countryside because they can't afford the properties. They're having to go in the towns. This gives us an opportunity to provide 30 affordable houses. Can we stipulate we want all 30?
Could I ask a question here? Is this relevant to your planning application today?
It's not directly relevant to the planning application today, but I'm happy to deal with the matter if that's helpful for members.
Okay, carry on, Councillor Moore.
Mr. Hunter?
So the planning permission in principle indicates it deals with the affordable housing issue, and through that, through discussion with housing colleagues and as approved by this committee, the detail is that there will be 20 affordable houses on site and 10 provided through commuted some. So that's the position set out in the planning permission in principle, and the planning permission in principle is the binding document for the development. How the housing comes forward, whether that's through approval of a further matters specified in condition application or whether it's through a separate full application, might impact on the approach the ultimate developer takes to delivering the affordable housing, but it's not a matter that's directly relevant to the matters we're looking at today.
Thank you.
Any other questions to our officer?
There's no further hands up, convener.
No further. Okay, no further. We'll move on then to our speakers. We have, first of all, we have Anne Watson, an objector. Anne Watson, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here. Hold on a second. Let me put my camera on. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you well. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. I'll be very quick. I actually own the property number 34 Shanklevomachie Cottage, and it's the closest to the proposed 6-storey hotel. I don't actually know how close the hotel will be, as the plans on the council website do not give such information. I would also like to understand the landscaping cottage, and with this in mind, I would like to have actually regular meetings with the relevant people if this project goes ahead. Until now, I've not really been invited to anything to discuss this in detail. I have 3 main concerns related to the impact of the project on my cottage, which I've logged on the council website, but I'd like to highlight one now, and it's drainage. Having been brought up at Shanklevomachie, I know the land as best as anybody, and in prolonged periods of rain, the water pours down the fields from behind the cottage and floods the farm. And my father took mitigation actions behind the cottage, which work. But there is a wood directly, and I think this wood will be felled, and the farmland and the wood, of course, absorb the water now. But in the proposal, you're proposing to tarmac most of that area with a car park, and I'm wondering where on earth this water is going to go. Trade, and what I would welcome is a discussion with the people about the drainage behind my cottage, please. Another thing I want to say, you said I had 5 minutes. My plan was actually to retire to the cottage. And at the moment I'm running it as a small business, so letting out on a weekly basis to tourists. And my guests come for peace and quiet, of course, and lovely walks. But of course, once the construction starts, my business will collapse. And unless a developer can come up with some kind of mitigation action, either alternative accommodation or something else, I would like to continue the business afterwards once the hotel is built, if possible, until I retire. But this is something that needs to be discussed. Comments. I mean, the area was always farmland, and it was used to produce food. I'm not sure what another hotel or golf course can bring. People mention a £40 million boost to the area. But quite frankly, I wonder where this money will go. I'm also a little bit worried about the detrimental impact on the local area, such as traffic, schools and health services, which I know the council will look at because the project has gone on for so long. And finally, just one question to the council. The world is changing very quickly, as we can see in Ukraine. And the people with these millions to invest, like the people who are behind this project, will start to look for a safe haven for their money. What will happen from a legal perspective if the hotel construction is halted prior to completion? What happens? Does it just stay there like a white elephant, or does something else happen? So it'd be nice to know if someone has dug in. And then finally, all in all I want is to have regular updates with the project team. and to mitigate the impact on the cottage, my business, and to ensure people are happy, that all parties are happy. So until now, I've not had any discussion about this project with the development team. So that would be
Right, thank you. Any questions on? No questions?
Thank you.
No. Well, I think all your concerns will be taken on board during the planning process. But Alan, would you comment on the drainage, sort of how that's dealt with in the report?
Happy to do so, convener. You'll note specifically we've got conditions 2F and 2G. 2F deals specifically with surface water drainage, and 2G deals with the foul drainage arrangements for existing properties within the development. Now, in terms of surface water, the proposal is to provide surfaced areas for the car parking, but consistent with the principles of sustainable urban drainage systems, the applicant will need to provide information to demonstrate that the surface water is appropriately dealt with. That will be prepared by their engineers, and it will be reviewed by the council's engineers. So in many respects, what we're going from a situation where there is runoff from the field, where that surface water is largely unmanaged, to a situation where surface water will be positively managed. So, you know, I can't promise a benefit, but certainly I get Mrs. Watson that the issue is one that will be looked at and will be addressed.
Okay, right. Thank you, Alan, for that. So where are questions for Anne by the members? So do any members have any questions for Anne before we move on to our next speaker? No. Well, we'll move on to our next speaker, who is Linda Klink. Are you with us, Linda? No.
Sorry, convener. I think that's Mrs. Klink that's coming on the telephone, but she's on mute at the moment. Could you unmute yourself, Mrs. Klink? Hello, Mrs. Klink, are you hearing us? Mrs. Klink, if you press the keypad, figure 6, it's 6 to unmute yourself on the telephone. If you press number 6 on your keypad, Mrs. Klink. The star first and then 6, I believe. So it's star and then 6.
Good morning.
I think that's Mrs. Klink now, convener.
Hello, Mrs. Klink, do you hear me?
Yes, I've been hearing you all along. I think your system had me muted. It wasn't anything my end.
Yes. Okay. Carry on with what you've got to say then.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. In the 5 minutes allocated to me, I would like to address concerns about primarily the safety of persons being hit by golf balls hit out of bounds from the golf course, especially from balls being driven off tee points. Secondly, road safety. And thirdly, the lack of public consultation and transparency which might ensue from the roads being approved under a roads construction process rather than the public planning process. For the golf ball safety, I refer as an example to the row of 5 houses adjacent to hole 10 and its 4 tee-off areas located on the master plan at the clubhouse, paragraph 817 of the planning office. It might be helpful if the planning officer can show a close-up of this area of the master plan. I challenged the close proximity of the golf course to the houses and raised from my own personal experience of a very near miss of being struck in the face by a hard, fast golf ball hit by a golfer out of bounds from a tee on a golf course while sitting in a garden of a home in Angus Council's area. I found no published standards for safety, distance, margins from an internet search, and the applicant's golf safety assessment provides none, nor any reference to a body that can be checked as to how far away from a tee the golf course boundary should be for safety, to avoid persons, including children, playing in their garden, being struck or injured by a golf ball hit out of bounds. Unlike the driving range, no safety net is proposed, and there's no planning condition proposed to ensure a minimum distance separation of golf course from residential boundaries. In my representation, I referred to the article I found online, written by Jonathan Gaunt, European Institute of Golf Course Architects Senior Member, entitled Danger Ahead, Safety Issues on UK Golf Courses, originally published in Golf Club Secretary, November 2015, more than 6 years ago. The article states if current industry accepted, and industry accepted are in quotes, safety margins were to be legally applied, most of these courses would cease to operate. These safety margins range from 60 to 80 metres and up to 100 metres, depending on what neighbouring land use is. In recent years, due to technological advances made in equipment and balls, this has needed to be increased to 80 metres, and in relation to railway lines and motorways, the advisory distance increases to 100 metres. The tee points at hole 10 look like they are 20, maybe 30 metres from the house garden boundaries, and these residential properties are closer to the tee point properties adjacent to the new driving range, where it is deemed a golf safety fence is required for safety and amenity, and that's condition 12. The westmost tee point is a metre higher than the eastmost tee point. If this height difference is the same at the fence line boundary with houses, a ball would only have to be around 60 centimetres or 2.5 school rulers high to clear a normal 6-foot high boundary fence. There is no, as I said, there's no planning condition proposed to ensure a safety distance or minimum separation of golf course or tee from the residential property. I kindly request consideration of a planning condition to ensure there is a minimum safety margin distance separating the golf course from the boundaries of homes and paths of at least 100 metres, with specific attention paid to distance from all tee-off points to the high-speed enforced balls and tee by drivers from the driving clubs on a minimum 6-metre high safety fence, which has been approved for a golf course extension to a safety fence in 2021. In terms of road safety, I'd like to request the details connecting to and within the development be subject to normal planning application process and planning approval, and addressed entirely by a roads construction consent process. The latter, I feel, is a non-transparent, closed, non-consultative process and does not seem to allow residents who would be impacted a say before the agreement and the roads changes is done and dusted. I refer, for example, to the area on Matrix Road, on which the school bus, the primary school runs. There are 2 entrances on the master plan of Matrix Road, one running at 45 degrees with a corner of 3978 and the second to east before Matrix Road turns south. Both of these look like alternative through roads for the commercial development. The eastmost entrance is a narrower road than the rest of the internal roads, and appears to be used for service delivery and collecting vehicles, staff, car park and the Golf Academy car park. It has no gates like the main entrance and seems to bypass the main entrance. Deliveries and staff arriving can happen very early in the morning, late at night, and these vehicles cannot, and if they're open roads, can try to avoid queuing to enter at the main entrance, especially during events. In my opinion, all traffic in non-residential areas of the hotel, golf course, academy, club events should be via the main entrance B978, and the other accesses should be for the residential areas only. for pedestrian safety, reduction of noise and nuisance, and safety of children attending the primary school and the primary school extension. There is no turning space at the main entrance to the gatehouse, and the gates appear to be so close to the B978, any vehicle denied entry would have to reverse back and onto the B978, or the vehicle behind it may have to reverse back onto the B978. This design choice seems an unnecessary risk to road safety. I feel any changes to the internal road routing on the master plan, car parking, or the existing houses could have a negative impact on residents. I feel these residents, along with the parents, teachers, head teacher at the school, should have the opportunity to be part of the consenting process for roads, voicing concerns and issues, as would happen with the planning application route. And in lieu of the residents of the new homes yet to be, then the public or the council's committee should have an opportunity to stand in lieu of these future residents and ensure that their safety and their amenity and minimum of noise nuisance is adhered to. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Linda. Any questions to Linda? No questions? Right, thank you, Linda. Well, what you've been saying today will be taken on board, and what you're you know, we're dealing with a lot of what you're saying is relevant to our planning application today, but a lot of your concerns will be taken on board at some point. I think that's all I can say at the moment. So we'll just move on. So we'll now move on to, we now have the applicant, Mike Forbes and Bob Evans with his team. They are not doing a presentation, but they are there for any questions from the members who have concerns or any questions that they may raise on this application, specifically to the three conditions that we are dealing with today. Any questions?
Yes, thank you, Convener. Mr. Forbes, just going back to what Mrs. Watson is saying about flooding. Now, we all know that schemes can be developed. It can look right technically, but it doesn't work on the ground. If that was the case, I presume you would be prepared to come back and ensure that any problems were dealt with and that the drainage was mitigated. Would that be correct?
Yeah, we've taken on a very professional team to deal with this, and we've given a great deal of thought to it, and we've put it in practice, and it's in the design already, to be fair. Currently, believe it or not, we still have a flooding issue down there. I have two of the lodges opposite Miss Ann Watson, and we still get massive flooding coming through the wood and actually flooding the road. So it's not a great situation currently at the moment, in fact, and we will be improving that situation hugely by doing what we're doing and putting in a series of drainage, I think they're called settlement areas, as well as feeding it away from where the main car park and housing is.
Yeah, coming from York, you can understand that I get concerned about flooding, but planting trees will drink a lot of water, and I'm just wondering whether there is scope for increasing the planting round that area in order to reduce the flooding.
No, I don't. I'm afraid I disagree with you there on the tree front, because what we tend to get now is what's called flash flooding, where we get extraordinary amounts of rain in one go, and it's beyond any tree or anything to really absorb it. The best way to deal with it is actually through proper drainage schemes, and that's why we've got the drainage experts involved who specialise in it, because currently it's certainly not working. We can barely drive cars when it's flooding at the moment, and it's just because of the way the current weather climate is changing away from sort of gentle bits of rain to more biblical type rain, to be fair.
And one last thing, Miss Watson and Miss Clink have both referred to consultation. Would you be prepared to have some sort of newsletter to go round, or a consultation group, just so that people can be made aware of what is happening when? Because I'm sure this is going to take a few years to build.
100%. I've got no problem whatsoever. I think it's probably better done on a one-to-one basis rather than a consultation group. Consultation groups tend to fire off at all angles, a bit like the red arrows. I would rather deal one-to-one with individual, try and help them out as best as we possibly can, and I'm delighted to do that personally.
Thank you.
Can I just add something to that as well, Councillor Moore? It's Bob Evans here from Ryan, part of the engagement through the contractor as well, as part of the construction management plan. And that sort of liaison group would be, as Mike says, on an individual sort of basis, so that each and every resident within and around the development site is properly and fully heard. There's a regular point of contact maintained then. That's just standard practice, good practice, and the contractors will be well up for that.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. Any other questions to the applicant?
Councillor Brace, convener.
Okay, I'm not seeing the hands. Who was that?
Councillor Brace, convener.
Councillor Brace.
Followed by Councillor King.
Okay.
Yes, thanks, convener. I was actually trying to take my hand down because Councillor Moore raised the question that really concerned me, and that was regarding the communication. I think we've had a pretty good answer from Mr. Forbes and Mr. Evans, and I really do hope that they'll pursue that. This is a huge development, and there should easily be accommodated good communication. Thank you.
Councillor King.
Yes, convener. I noted in Mr. Hunter's presentation that he said that the main access road to the hotel will be adopted and that the gates were not required, as you're not allowed to gate off a public road. Can I ask Mr. Forbes what the purpose of those gates are, and considering that the road will be adopted into the hotel, would he consider deleting them from the proposal? Because obviously if there's any major tournament or event at the hotel, then temporary gates can be put up if necessary.
My thoughts on that are the gates are ornamental and typical with Scottish estates, including Glams, there is many gates there that are not used. These gates would not be used but form part of what would be a very prestigious wow factor. The traffic management scheme we would adopt would probably form another barrier, a barrier that would be controlled by 2 or 3 people, a couple of people in the lodge house, and it would be done on us through the proper formal route through planning transport. But the gates themselves I genuinely feel in Scottish estates, this is a Scottish estate, it will be very Scottish, it's very similar to Glams Castle. We want people to feel that it's very smart, it's dry stone diking, and that's typical with we're trying to prevail here in something that looks fantastic and is iconic. I personally would not be keen to take the gates down and keep them ornamental if you didn't mind.
The whole point about Glams is that main entrance into Glams and the long drive down to Glams Castle is not an adopted road, and they are allowed to close it off when they want and open it when they want. This is going to be an adopted road. I mean, I find if you want to have ornamental gates, but can you make sure that they cannot be closed by unofficial people?
100%. I think that's very important, and that's a very valid point. I would 100% ensure that these gates are not closable and are tethered back in a permanent fixture.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions to the officer? The applicant, I should say.
There's Councillor Duff, convener.
Yeah, thanks, convener. It's not really a question. I guess it's more of a comment, or maybe there's a question underneath the comment.
Probably get comments after we're finished. Questions to the applicant.
Okay, well, I'll ask a question then, convener. When we last saw this application, the design of the hotel was a fairly sort of modernistic design, and I know some of my colleagues were not massively happy with that, and you seem to have moved back to what I would call a traditional, whether it's a Scots baronial style, and maybe that might please a lot of people who perhaps didn't like the sort of modern style that we saw several years ago. Was that a deliberate decision, Mr. Forbes?
If I can be really honest with you, I was not in charge of the first two applications. I actually contracted leukemia twice and was to sell the potential opportunity to a developer, and due to the lack of finances coming forward for each one of these cases, I decided that the only way this was going to be done, and took it by the throat and designed something that would be attractive and proper and iconic, and that's why we changed the whole thing. To give you an idea, the three-pronged hotel had 9 lifts in it. If you wanted to get to the spa in the east wing, you had to go through the foyer in your underpants, and I'll tell you, there was not a lot of thought had gone into it at all.
Mike, sorry, can I just add as well, Councillor, this is a design that is evolved with close consultation with the hotel operator. And Mike, I know you might not be able to say the details of the hotel operator, but it's a 5-star luxury brand, and that hotel design has gone hand in glove with the operational requirements of that operator, and it really is quite a special and a very high quality design now.
Any other questions to the applicant? No other questions. Well, thank you very much. I thought there might be more questions, but thank you very much. I think this is a very exciting application. So we'll just move on. So we'll move on to comments from members now. Open it to discussion for comments before we come to a decision. Councillor King, I see your hand up.
I put my mic off again. Right, I'm very happy to see this coming. It seems to take forever to get to a situation where you're getting to a position where you can actually start work. I note particularly that the permission for this development was given in 2019, and now we're dealing with the detail of some of the conditions. But we still seem to be getting objectors coming along thinking they can change the basic principle of development on this site. Well, I'm glad to say that has long gone. That's gone 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Now we're dealing with the absolute detail, which is why I challenged the gates. But I'm only too keen to see this going ahead. I think a luxury hotel and another golf course will do wonders for tourism in Angus, and it's all power to Mr. Forbes' elbow. I feel that this is something which really should have been moving a lot faster, and as Mr. Forbes says, the Forbes family took it back under their control to start moving it forward. Well, I would just hope that we can keep moving it forward and get everything going, get it built, and get any final bits and pieces dealt with, and deal with any matters that arise as they come up in the future.
Thank you, Councillor King. Any other comments? No other comments? Councillor Cheap.
Yeah, thanks, convener. Yeah, just quite surprised there aren't any more comments on this. I just echo really what Councillor King has just said. This is all initially approved before my time as a councillor in principle, but anything such as this, which enhances the Angus economy and brings further tourism, can only be welcomed. I think the design is significantly improved from what I saw from the previous application and slides, and I think realistically, I really hope this venture can can proceed and proceed at pace. But really, I can't see fault to it at all. And I think the addressing of road access and screening and has all been enhanced. I think indeed when it comes back for elements of it in detail, we'll take a greater look at it. But in principle, I heartily welcome this.
Thank you, Councillor Cheap. Councillor Breeze is next, I think.
And similar to Councillor King and Councillor Cheap, I welcome this. I really like the change of design. While a big fan of the contemporary, I can well understand why you would want to take a more traditional approach, because presumably they're meaning this hotel to be there for a very long time, and of course contemporary is only contemporary for a short time. So yes, and I don't see anything to worry about in the purpose of this this meeting, which is the conditions. So like the others, I wish the developer every success, but I would hope, as I said earlier, that you'll take a wee bit of time to communicate as best you can with those who have concerns about this. There aren't that many of them, and this will mean a massive change for them. So it'd be good if you can just pay a wee bit of attention to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Breeze. Councillor Duff.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. Yes, I would just echo the comments of my colleagues. Really, I think this is a major, very ambitious development. I think Mr. Forbes is to be commended for it, and it's ambitious, but we need this sort of investment. I think in Angus, it fits in with the council's aspirations, so I would wish him every success.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Any other comments? No other comments? Well, at this stage, I can only agree with what we've heard from Councillor King, Cheap, Breeze and Duff. I'm not to go on, we run out of superlatives if I wanted, but I'm just going to move on, that we move this report that's before us for approval. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
So therefore, report number 97/22 is approved. Thank you, and I wish you well, Mr. Forbes, on this, and look forward to seeing in completion. Thank you. Right, we'll move on to our next application, which is, I can find my papers. This just is an extension of time for extracting sand and gravel there. Councillor, Mr. Hunter, do you want to give us a report on this?
More than happy to provide slides if members would wish
yes,
to see
slides. Yes,
Just check that's visible to members. Thank you. So, as you've indicated, Convener, this is an application that relates to Powmire Quarry at Roundy Hill beside Glams. It's an application under Section 42 of the Planning Act. Sorry, and an application under Section 42 is an application to allow development to continue, subject to different conditions than attached to the existing planning permission. In very broad terms, the site has planning permission to operate up until 2023. There are mineral reserves that remain to be worked at the site, and the applicant has indicated an additional period of time up to 2035 to allow for the extraction of those minerals and restoration of the site. So just in some context, we have the location identified with the red line area in the centre of the screen. sits roughly midway between Kirriemuir to the north and Glams to the south, round about 3 kilometres distance from each. We have the public road located to the east and a dedicated Quarry Hall Road that's been constructed, which leads into the site at the present time. Aerial photograph, again, public road located to the east, the right-hand side of the screen, Quarry Road leading into the site. This is the quarry processing area. We have existing areas that have been worked and subsequently restored. So the area that we see to the right of the processing area is an area that has already had mineral extraction. The ground levels have been lowered, the mineral extracted, and it's been restored to grassland. Again, in this area, mineral extracted and fishing loch-in have been constructed, as you can see in this image. An area here will ultimately form part of the overall fishing loch-in. The areas to the west of the processing area, so the area that we see, and the areas to the north of that are the areas where mineral remains to be extracted. So this is the quarry phasing plan from the original planning permission. Quarry's been operational since round about March 2008. The phasing shows the phase 1, which was the formation of the processing facility, extraction of material and formation of the processing area. Phase 2, phase 3, phase 4 and phase 5, largely complete, as you saw from the aerial photograph, restoration taking place in these areas at the present time. The phase 6 area, working around 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12, still to be worked, but worked in a progressive manner. So as we see extractions and extraction moving into phase 7, the phase 6 area will be restored as we move around the site. So progressive restoration, same manner as we see to the east of the site. The restoration plan, ultimately the site restored to agriculture prior to quarrying operations and returned to agriculture. Existing wetland area that's of some biodiversity value retained within the central area. That area is not worked. And again, an existing wetland located to the southeast, again protected during the course of development. And we have the fishing loch-in, located just at the eastern side, and you've seen that's now in the process of being formed. And the applicant has indeed received a commendation from Scottish Wildlife Trust for some of the restoration at this site. So again, just another image shows the restoration that's taken place. The area in green restored, the blue loch-in area in the process of being formed, and this is roughly the situation round about 2000. Next stage of development would be the extraction to the west of the processing area that we see here. Just a photograph that shows some of the restoration that's taken place. The grassland area, this is referred to as the Daresay Strip, an area for the quarry works, and the fishing loch-in just in the middle ground, and another image that shows that loch-in now in situ with the Daresay Strip trees located beyond that. In place, we have the area. This is a photograph taken from Auchindory, as you can see from the road sign. The Daresay Strip, I believe, is this area. The restoration that's taken place across here, and extraction still to take place in the area that we see at the right-hand side of the screen. You can maybe also make out a shelter belt of trees, and that would be felled in later phases of the development. And again, you can see from conditions attached to the report that there are requirements for that to be set for ecological reasons prior to its felling. But the nature of the working, the extent of the working, none of that changes in comparison to the permission previously granted by committee. So the operation of the quarry remains identical to what's previously been approved. The difference is the extended period of time for working. Again, just a list of the site. Daresay Strip, you can see that's the retained woodland. The areas that have previously been worked in this area, and further extraction to take place in the areas beyond belt to be felled at a later stage. So properties at Roundy Hill and some other immediate environs will be aware of the works. It's a quarry, but we do have conditions that seek to mitigate the impacts of the operational effects. The quarry's been operational for a number of years. The extended period application has attracted no objections from neighbours, from people in the immediate vicinity, from our statutory consultees, which is surely a positive indication of the workings to date. Again, just to bring it back, the proposal allows for restoration of the development in accordance with the rest of the proposals previously approved by committee. So ultimately, this is an extended period of time, but no different to the method of operation to the restoration proposals that we see at the end of the day. Proposal helps maintain our supply of sand and gravel that's vital for economic activity in the area, and the application's ready for approval. Thank you.
Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Convener. Mr. Hunter, this shelter belt to be felled, how many trees are there?
I don't have an indication of the number of trees. It's a fairly sizable area. There will be fairly sizable felling as part of it. The restoration proposals include replanting. So the applicant's aspiration is that there'll be a biodiversity improvement at the end of the restoration proposals. As I've indicated, we've got no objection to the proposal from relevant consultation bodies, and the restoration that's taken place to date has been commended by Scottish Wildlife Trust.
Right, because I'm looking at the last slide that you showed of the land and the restoration, and there is no indication whatsoever on it of new planting of trees. There is only existing woodland and existing areas of wetland, no new planting. And I'm concerned that if you're going to take out that very significant shelter belt, then there must be a condition that they've got to put in more planting. It's turning land graded and return to agriculture is what the slide says. But I do not see any replacement planting for it.
So perhaps I can clarify, Councillor Moore. I think the annotation on the applicant's drawing is perhaps not particularly clear, but there are proposals for additional planting in the vicinity of the Daresay Strip and in the vicinity of the lochen that's being created. The detail of that is provided in the whole statement that accompanied the original planning permission. So the restoration proposals, the felling of the shelter belt that you reference, that's approved. That's something that was approved as part of the original application, and the replanting that's provided as part of the restoration again is something that's approved and unchanged in the context of the current proposal.
Thank you.
Councillor King.
Yes, Convener. Just to clarify, Mr. Hunter, at the moment we are only being asked to extend the timescale for quarrying operations on this site until March 2035. The question of felling and replanting of shelter belts is not up for discussion because that was dealt with when planning permission was granted in 2003. Is that correct? And if you could just remind us what the original terminal date was supposed to be.
I'll start at the end of that question, if you don't mind, Councillor King. The original termination date is 2023. There are around roughly 2 million tonnes of sand and gravel still to be extracted at the site. So initially it was indicated there were just over 4 million tonnes. Only 2 million of that has been extracted, largely, I guess, as a consequence of economic circumstances. Around about 2008, 2009, we had the recession. We've had COVID, which has probably reduced the demand for sand and gravel as well. So the extraction rate has been lower than anticipated. So original termination date was 2023, and committee is being asked to extend that to 2035 to allow all of the extraction to take place and restoration. In terms of the felling of the woodland strip, you're absolutely right, Councillor King. That was approved as part of the original permission. What I would say is that if circumstances had changed materially in the intervening period, it would be appropriate to have regard to any change in circumstance in considering the appropriateness of felling those trees. But the application is accompanied by an environmental impact assessment report. That environmental impact assessment report has looked at the value of the trees, their ecological value in particular, and there is no indication that there's a material change in circumstance. From the environmental impact assessment report, information from consultation bodies is that ultimately this proposal provides a benefit in terms of biodiversity for the area.
Thank you, Mr. Hunter. That was the way I understood it.
Right. Thank you. Any other questions to the officer? No other questions. We'll move on to comments. Any comments? Well, there are no comments. I will just move on. As Councillor King said, what we're looking at today is extending the Quarry timescale to 2035. So that's quite simple. So I'm quite happy to move this report that's before us. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
So therefore, report number 98/22 is approved with the conditions that are attached, of course. Thank you. We'll move on to the tree preservation order now at Monifeith House, Albert Monifeith. You want to update us on this, Alan?
Again, I've got slides if that would be helpful.
Slides, yes, please.
Convener. So thank you again, Convener. As you've indicated, this presentation relates to a tree preservation order at Monifeith House, Albert Street, Monifeith, and members are being asked to confirm the order that has been made by officers. Just to clarify, if the order is not confirmed, it will expire on in July this year. So it's time limited. The order made by officers is time limited to a period of 6 months. The site, as we see, identified just in the middle of the screen, Albert Street located to the west, Durham Street just in this area, Hill Street located to the south, and the wider town centre located at a short distance to the southeast of the slide. Mogg Street is the main road running between Carnoustie and Dundee, so maybe around about a little more meters from the main road up to the woodland that we see in this area. I should point out the trees lie within the curtilage of Monifeith House. We have no objection to the making of the order from the owner of the house, the owner of the trees. We have objections to the order from the two properties that we see located to the southeast of the site, and a letter of support from a further resident located to the south of the area. Just in some context, this is the area of trees in question, located in this area, Monifeith House, north. The two objectors' properties located in the area that we see here, the property that we see just identified with the cursor, Hill Street, Albert Street and Durham Street, located just at the left-hand side of the screen. Again, you'll see that woodland, trees, particularly in the proximity of houses, is a characteristic of this area of Monifeith, and we have a number of tree preservation orders in the wider area that seek to retain these, guard the amenity of the area. The tree preservation orders have been made in recognition of the amenity value that the trees provide to the character of the wider. Just of note, we have a western and a cedar tree located at the eastern extent of the group of trees, and I think the representations principally relate to impact on the amenity of neighbouring property. Monkey puzzle, some other trees as described in the report before you, to the property at I believe it's 1 Hill Street, and we have no representation from that particular property. Photograph just from Durham Street, you can see the monkey puzzle tree, the western hemlock and the deodar cedar located at this grouping. Tree preservation order would cover all the trees within that we see here, and you can see just at the junction of Albert Street, Durham Street, quite a prominent feature in the townscape at this area. Moving on, this is from the railway bridge just to the south of Mall Street. So again, you can see the monkey puzzle tree at the western extent of the grouping, the western hemlock and the deodar cedar just at the eastern extent of the area that would be covered by the TPO. Again, the trees that we see in this area, again within the TPO area, the trees that we see here located in some distance to the designated area itself. From the garden of one of the objectors' properties, this is the deodar cedar. You can see quite a substantial and fairly close to the boundary of the neighbouring property. The trees do sit generally to the northwest of the affected properties. Some concerns raised regarding impact on amenity. The shading that we see here of the garden area is from the house, and certainly taken the closest area to the trees in benefiting from some sunshine, from some daylight, but undoubtedly there will be cast some shadow. Photograph from the other property, you see fairly narrow private rear garden area. Again, shadowing caused principally in this case by the shadow from the house itself. Holly tree, the western hemlock, deodar cedar located just at the eastern extent of the property itself. The other objector's property you can see just in this area. Again, relatively small garden, immediately affected by the trees that we see in this image. Concerns about safety of the trees. Trees have been inspected by a tree surgeon on behalf of the owner. No specific defects identified that would compromise the integrity of the trees. There is some dead wood And just to confirm, tree preservation order would not prevent necessary works being undertaken to the trees. Our tree officer has agreed to meet with the landowner, meet with his tree surgeon, and agree any works that are necessary in order to deal with issues associated with the trees in the short term. Again, just a view looking in a slightly different direction. We have some of the foliage, the hemlock, holly tree. You can bring property where we have no objection. Again, reasonably close to the woodland area, and you can see the shadow cast by the house itself just in this area. Hill Street, the two properties where we have the objections from, you can see sizable trees, but very much a characteristic feature of the area. Monkey Puzzle located just at the western extent, the remainder of the trees extending across to the cedar tree located in this area. Again, just point out from this image, you can see the two properties are fairly sizable front garden areas, and again, you can see from this image. So we have one of the properties in this area with garden area to the south, and again the other property with a fairly sizable garden area located and Hill Street with privacy provided by the fairly substantial walls that we see in but very much the high trees, their proximity to properties is a characteristic feature of the area. Tree surgeons are fairly satisfied that the trees are robust and healthy and have a good period of life remaining. Trees that contribute significantly to the amenity of the area, and the report recommends the confirmation of the tree preservation order that's before you. It does not prevent any to deal with any issues associated with the trees. Thank you, Convener.
No, sorry. We ask questions to our officer. Councillor Cheap, I didn't see your hand was up first, but I'll take Councillor Cheap first.
Yeah, thanks, Convener, on this one. Mr. Hunter, can we just go back to that last slide, please? That you, if it's possible, to see that photograph, which is a good representation of the surrounding trees and things. Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, just of interest in Mr. Hunter here, kind of quite wondering why the TPO has come up in the first place on this one. If we look to the right of this slide, all these more substantial trees, are they subject to TPOs as well? Do you know? Because they're far more impressive than the ones shown at Moneyfield House, I would have thought. That's the first part of my question.
I'm happy at the moment, Councillor Cheap. I believe concern was raised regarding the potential felling of some of the trees. That was a matter that was raised with officers, and the Planning Act identifies a duty, a requirement on the planning authority to have regard to the desirability of preserving trees. Because of the immediate threat that was apparent to the trees, it was considered appropriate to make the provisional order to provide that level of safety for the trees. There are other tree preservation orders in the wider area. I could not put my hand on my heart, Councillor Cheap, and tell you exactly which trees are subject of tree preservation order. There's a fairly significant strip just off my slide to the north, to the northeast perhaps, where I know there is certainly a tree preservation order. But yes, you're absolutely right. There are a significant number of trees in this area, and they all contribute to the overall leafy character of the area.
Thanks, man. And when you said the threat of felling, was that from the owner of Moneyfield House, or where was that threat coming from?
I understand that the owner of the property had been approached by the two residents who have raised objection to the tree preservation order, and there had been discussion about potential for, in particular, the western hemlock and the deodar cedar, the two trees at the eastern extent of the site, to be felled.
Right. Okay. Just my only fine. Thanks for that. Okay. I'll leave. Can I come back with a comment, convener, in a moment or two, if possible?
Of course, yes. Move on to Councillor King.
Yes, thank you. Can Mr. Hunter tell me, I mean, if you could go back to page 204, the immediately preceding slide.
Is that the image you're looking for,
That's
Councillor
the image I'm looking for. Mr. Hunter, looking at those trees, they are extremely substantial. Have indications of how old they are?
The trees are generally indicated to or estimated to date from the Victorian period. There is a suggestion that the monkey puzzle, the western hemlock, and the cedar are possibly all fairly contemporaneous in terms of age. They're all estimated to have a reasonably lengthy duration left in terms of lifespan.
Yes. Follow up on that. So they were there when these houses were built?
They would have been there long before the houses were built, Councillor King.
Yes, I'm very much aware of western hemlocks. I have one at the bottom. I have two at the bottom of my garden in the neighbouring property. Unfortunately, they're to the south of me, not the north. These ones don't.
Okay. Any other questions to Alan? No other questions. Right, we'll move on. We have one speaker. We have Mrs. Jones. Are you with us, Mrs. Jones?
Yes, I'm here.
Right, well, you've got 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning, members. I just wanted to start by correcting a statement in paragraph 5.5 in the representation document. This states that there was no damage following the two recent storms. Contrary to this, there was many branches came down, broke several panes of glass, including the door in our greenhouse, and a substantial branch hit and slid down our bedroom window. I'm sure anybody would surely agree that this is terrifying, especially at night. The fence below the trees was also forced down by a particularly large falling branch. We then have to expend money repairing this, not the people admiring the trees from afar. Fortunately, on this occasion, this is just a financial but unwelcome burden, not injury or worse, to the occupiers of 1A and 1B Hill Street. Paragraph 6.5 states that the trees themselves do not cause damp. Well, we take that on board. There is dampness at that side of our house, and the pictures that you have seen of the sun only shows a certain sunlight at certain times of the day, and the vast majority of the day there is no sun at that side of the house. So that, combined with the volume of the pine needles from these trees that fall into the gutters from the roof, it causes them to overflow when there is heavy rainfall. While we constantly clear them, it does still happen during rainstorms, and it results in them having to be cleaned during the actual storm because the gutters are running like waterfalls. We note the statement that the trees survived the storms, implying therefore that they must be safe. But could it not be that the opposite may also apply, that they are becoming more and more unsafe the more storms we have? We fully accept that the planet must be protected, and we certainly endeavour to do as much as we can ourselves, but feel that each case must be looked at individually. And we, as a long-standing ratepayer, should also be protected. We're finding it hard to make people to understand the very real threat that we feel, and no amount of insurance recompense, if it was ever paid out, is going to compensate for the trauma of being injured or the loss of life. Will the people who give reassurances that the trees are healthy and safe and the council that imposes the restrictions feel any responsibility should this happen. I doubt it. You state in the human rights implications that you are using your powers for the protection of amenity in Angus, but you are not protecting the people of Angus living in the affected properties. We feel that our human rights are being ignored and would have welcomed a visit from any of the committee members at any time who are taking this decision, which will impact so heavily on our lives. The 2 trees in question, and it is solely those 2 trees, not the rest of them, which are so close to our houses, may be lovely viewed from the Angus Coastal Path and Marine Drive, but it is terrifying and overpowering living beneath those branches from a day-to-day fear of those branches dropping, and with no warning, and this has already happened. And this situation will only become worse as they continue to grow further over our roofs, thus further increasing the frequency of them falling and risking danger to our properties and injury and loss of life even. The 3 properties affected do have other trees in their gardens, offering a valuable environment and habitat for birds and wildlife, and it is quite probable that more will be planted in due course. We cannot, of course, speak for the people who oppose the felling and quote environmental concerns, although they do not appear to have, from any photographs we've viewed, to have any trees in their own garden. We cannot stress enough that we, the owners of 1A and 1B, feel endangered, and that we should be offered the same kind of protection that would allow us to enjoy our retirements in our houses and gardens. We wish to strongly state once again that healthy trees have been uprooted or sheared off both horizontally and vertically during the storms, and feel that no amount of tree surveys or reassurances can be given to make us feel safe. Thank you for your time.
Right, thank you, Mrs. Jones. Any questions to Mrs. Jones? No questions. Right, we'll move on to comments. Any members have any comments? Councillor Cheap, was that a question or comments now?
No, this is a comment, Convener.
Carry on then, Councillor Cheap.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think I do have some sympathy for Mrs. Jones, because this coming to where I was coming from in my initial question is that, supporter of tree preservation orders where appropriate, but I think Storm Arwen and the storms subsequently have changed or brought more attention to trees, and I think the danger of some of them is concerning. I've brought up to council officers a number of queries that have come from my own constituents in Carnoustie about the heights of trees overlooking people's gardens, and if these trees comes down, these trees will come down on people's houses. They are now so tall. I'm referring particularly to the ones around Pitskelly Park in Carnoustie, which I find dangerous, but I've been told by council officers they've been checked and they're not dangerous. That is a concern to residents, clearly. And I think I just looked at these trees and I thought, are these really worth a TPO? I think if they were maintained, if they were topped appropriately to be less of a threat, and I think we could do with a lot more of that happening. So I'm just not particularly happy. I'm not going against this, but I'm not really sure this deserves a TPO in my own point of view. But I do have a concern and understanding for neighbours who feel there is a threat. And clearly, in the storm, we've seen Mrs. Jones just describe how that threat was delivered in her own case. So I think we're taking TPO into account. We need to consider ourselves on the heights of some of these trees and appropriate maintenance to them.
Thank you. Councillor Moore, followed by Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Convener. Yes, I also have sympathy for Mrs. Jones. Storm Arwen was exceptional. I lost 3 trees. My neighbour sent 6 trees into my garden, but that's the first time in 10 years that's happened to me. Yeah, if the tree can be healthy and still be affected, or the tree can be unhealthy and get away with it, we don't know. But if we have our council officer, our tree officer, discussing the situation with the tree owner and their tree surgeon and taking whatever action that they think is correct in order to protect the tree and to protect the area, then I think that is better than simply losing trees from what is a very, very pleasant area to look at.
Right. Thank you, Councillor Moore. Councillor Duff.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. I think I would perhaps disagree with Councillor Moore. The problem is Storm Arwen isn't exceptional. It's very much now the norm. We've had 3 or 4 of those storms in the last few months, and I know round about me a great number of trees have come down successively in storms. Now, I'm reassured partly by the fact that these trees have been inspected. However, I think there is a health and safety issue here. I mean, if you look at some of the pictures we've seen, they may be safe, but they're incredibly overbearing trees. Now, there's a place for large mature trees if you've got a large garden, but when you subdivide gardens, as we see in this area, then I think there is a concern there. I'm not particularly convinced that this tree preservation order is sensible, given the fact that we've got an enormous tree literally right at the border of a house and where the tree is. Now, we've got high hedge legislation, which was introduced a number of years ago. Not sure how well it's worked out, but if I was living on the other side of that huge tree, I wouldn't feel particularly happy or comfortable. And I would think, well, if that was to blow down one night, it'll probably demolish my house. And, you know, if this was a huge garden and the tree was in the middle of the garden, then fair enough. But when it's right at the border, I'm not particularly comfortable with it, thinking about it.
Right. Thank you, Councillor Duff. Any other comments? Councillor Nicholl.
Thank you, Convener. As far as I'm aware, tree preservation does not prevent the maintenance of the trees or the felling if required. So that's all I have to say.
Right, thank you. Councillor Duff, is that an old hand? Yes. Any other comments? Well, we have this tree preservation order in front of you, and I would just like to confirm this tree preservation order. I think we've got to try and preserve all those trees, and especially the varieties of the trees that are here before us today. So I'm moving that we confirm this tree preservation order.
Agreed.
Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. Okay, therefore report number 98/22, the tree preservation order is confirmed. Right, thank you. That finalises our meeting for today. Thank you for your attendance, and thank you to the officers and our staff. We've got more development standards meeting to go, Councillor King, and that's us retired.